The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast.
This is the deal. One, you're getting back in transition. You don't have Giannis find a man and be a guard. Two, look at me. You set a high level for yourself. That's why you're down. That's great. Now go reach that level, okay? And you can reach it with force. Doesn't have to be stats all the time. Go dominate the game with force, okay? Because you set a high level for yourself. Go dominate the game with force. Go.
The Phoenix Suns won again and now are up 2-0 in the NBA Finals. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. Sam, how you doing?
2-0, baby. A resilient as hell victory from our Phoenix Suns. I'm feeling great.
I think it was a remarkable game for a lot of reasons. I don't know if we can call them unexpected stars. It's something we talked about, I guess, before the game a little bit. These role players potentially stepping up in this game. But I think a big part of it was also just Devin Booker just sort of doing the Devin Booker thing, especially any time that the Bucks chipped away at the Suns' lead. It was like that's when Devin Booker played well, especially after he started the game kind of rough, I'd say.
7 for 12 from deep, Mike. Is that doing the Devin Booker thing? Because that is welcome news to hear. I'm in his game log right now. Let me see. That is only the third time in the playoffs that we've gotten Devin Booker shooting above 50% from deep in a game. He was hitting difficult shots all night long. Really set the tone for the Suns, obviously, and contrasted a little bit. Not to get to the bad news here. I wouldn't even call this bad news. Chris Paul, I think, played a really strong 3 quarters. And then had kind of an uncharacteristically tough fourth quarter. He had 6 turnovers tonight, which is unusual for Chris Paul. So Booker really had to be that guy down the stretch, and he was when the Suns needed him to be.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean when I say the Devin Booker thing. The shots where they just kind of rip your heart out, that's his thing. And you know what? Chris Paul does it as well. It's nice that the Suns have 2 guys that are capable of doing that. But I think we should start at the beginning. What this game sort of looked like for the Suns. The Bucks really, something we talked about a lot is how were the Bucks going to defend the Suns, and I think that was a bigger storyline from our perspective. Like from the Suns' perspective, it was a bigger storyline, I think, than how were the Bucks going to attack the Suns, which it turns out was just Giannis barreling into the paint over and over and over again. Which, by the way, is a good strategy when you have Giannis on your team. I think that's the right way to do it. But they didn't really switch to start this game. They played sort of a modified drop, but they were helping off the corners a lot to start the game. And that resulted in the Suns hitting 8 threes in the first quarter, which I imagine is close to the most they've made in a single quarter in this playoffs. Not necessarily.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily the regular season. I think they've had a few pretty big quarters like that. But the Bucks seemed to be okay with allowing the Suns to shoot those shots early in the game, and the Suns capitalized on it, even though the Bucks had the lead after 1. I was pretty confident when I saw that happening. How'd you feel?
You know what? I actually wasn't after the first quarter. I thought it was a pretty strong gamble by the Bucks, and definitely, we talk all this stuff about adjustments. They came out, they had those adjustments, like you said, playing that modified drop, not increased help, trying to take away the mid-range, allowing those shooters to get to their spots, plus really strong ball pressure. I thought Drew Holiday came out in the first quarter and had a hell of a first quarter. He didn't have a good game exactly. He shot 7 for 21, but he came out, and we were talking in our pregame spaces about how he was going to press Chris Paul the entire court. Maybe those two things are related. Maybe he ran out of gas because of the extra energy he exerted on defense. But I was pretty impressed with what the Bucks were doing in the first quarter, and in general, they didn't allow the Suns to get into the paint in the first. I remember at one point, a graphic came up on screen that said the Bucks had like 20 points in the paint to the Suns 0. They neutralized DeAndre Ayton effectively. But what I love so much about the Suns team as the game went on is that again and again, they prove just how incredibly balanced they are. when a team tries to take something away from the Suns, in the case of tonight, the Bucks were taking away that mid-range area. They were stopping Chris Paul and Devin Booker early in the game, and they needed other role players to step up. They were also helping on the roll to take away Ayton, to be honest, kind of shot himself in the foot on some possessions, but also the Bucks were playing him well on the roll. But when they take something away, other players step up, just like a counterweight, like they need to automatically. And in this case, Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges hitting shots, able to swing the balance back, the momentum back in favor of the Suns, to the point where the Bucks couldn't just help off those shooters anymore. They had to start paying more attention to them in the second half, and that opened the game up for the Suns star players. It was just beautiful basketball, and just really, I don't know what to say anymore, Mike. Like, this is such a balanced roster. We've been talking about it all year, but for Mikal Bridges, who, let's be honest, has not had all that great of a playoffs, to step up and have 27 points, 7 rebounds and assists on 8 of 15 shooting tonight when you need him to. A guy who traditionally doesn't get to the free throw line all that much, but attacked several closeouts tonight, created offense for himself and others, hit 8 free throws, got to the line 8 times, hit all 8 of his free throws. What a performance from Mikal Bridges. And just in general, what a performance from the wings to be able to step up precisely when the Suns needed them to.
I'm gonna call you out a little bit. On our last episode, you questioned me saying Mikal was the fourth best player.
Yeah. Well,
in reality, it's
Jay
closer.
Crowder
it's
had
between,
a good game. Jay Crowder
but it's
also
not
had
the
a
same.
good game.
It's just not the same. Jay Crowder catches and shoots. Mikal attacks, and the ability to attack is what brings a different dynamic to the Suns' offense. It's if you can close out on Jay Crowder, he's still going to shoot, and those are going to be tougher shots for him. If you close out on Mikal, he'll use your momentum against you, and that's different. And for Mikal, it's commonly we debated throughout the season whether or not he was the third best player on the Suns. I think DeAndre Ayton at times has been the best player on the Suns this postseason at a lot of times, I would say. So I think it's fair to say that he's solidified in that top 3 for the Suns, but Mikal Bridges is right there, and I think this was a game where he proved it, where he not only played really, really great offensively, he also played another excellent defensive game against Chris Middleton and the rest of the Bucks roster with the Suns switching around. The only time he had trouble was when the Bucks were screening off the ball to force Mikal to guard Giannis, and that's where Giannis went off a little bit in the third quarter. And I think the Suns adjusted well to that later on. They essentially just put Jay Crowder on him. Jay Crowder can fight through screens a lot better than DeAndre Ayton can. DeAndre Ayton was struggling fighting through screens, even fouled Chris Middleton on one of those screens, and that's where they struggled to keep somebody bigger and stronger on Giannis. And good adjustment by Monty, by the way. I know sometimes people get on him for mid-game adjustments. That was a perfect example of one, and I thought Jay did a really good job on him after that.
What you should be calling me out for, can I just say?
Sure.
What you should be calling me out for is that I had previously compared Mikal Bridges to Chris Middleton in saying that's what he's going to be in 5 years. Well, he dominated that matchup tonight.
Yeah.
Chris Middleton, 5 for 16 from the field, 11 points in 41 minutes.
He's the second option on his team compared to Mikal being the fourth.
I know. I know. I'm not saying he's a better player.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm not saying Mikal's a better player. Not at all. But for tonight, let's give him his flowers. I mean, that was as dominant a performance within the context of that matchup as it gets for a role player like Mikal Bridges. And he makes $4 million. Chris Middleton makes $33. Now, Bridges won't be making $4 million a year anymore for very long. We know that. And in fact, I'm sure his agent was very pleased with his performance tonight and immediately forwarded it to Robert Sarver and James Jones. But yeah, I mean, just a critical performance when we needed it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was incredible. But I think we need to I just want to cover the context of everything that happened tonight, because I think that Ayton was getting, I think, some unnecessary hate early on in this game because he struggled a little bit offensively. I think he was 2 for 6 at one time. Ended the game 4 for 10, 40%. I would venture to guess, I haven't looked it up, that this was his least efficient game that he's played so far in these playoffs. But if you're going to give Mikal Bridges credit, or Jay Crowder credit, or Cameron Johnson credit for what they were able to do on the perimeter, you need to acknowledge that the reason that they were able to do that is because of the attention that DeAndre Ayton draws. With DeAndre Ayton rolling to the rim tonight, what the Bucks essentially did is they helped off the corners hard. So if he was catching the ball in the paint at all, which he almost wasn't because they made it so difficult for him to do that, he was surrounded by 2 players. The only other times they were allowing the ball get to him is if they were trapping, which they did on Cameron Payne a few times, and that was him catching it like 18, 19 feet away from the basket, which, as we know, sometimes he does well, sometimes he struggles to score. I think usually he makes good passes out of that position. Scoring is not really his forte from that position. But like, we need to just sort of acknowledge that when he had good games against the Denver Nuggets, we went on this podcast and we explained exactly what the Denver Nuggets were doing defensively that allowed him to play well. If he struggles a little bit offensively, it's our responsibility, I think, to explain why. It's because they were doubling him essentially off the ball. They were forcing him to struggle a little bit, and that's why other guys were able to go off.
I'm going to be honest with you, Mike. In no way am I mad at DeAndre Ayton for his performance tonight. Like I just said, Mikal has had all sorts of bad offensive performances tonight, and I haven't routinely gotten on his case. So by the same logic, I'm not going to do it about Ayton. But I think that explanation is a little flowery. I think his hands were just bad tonight. And I think he should be excused for a bad game. But there were a couple possessions in the first half. He caught the ball. He was right there under the rim. Should have just been able to sort of power through Lopez. And look, it's DeAndre Ayton. We know he's kind of a finesse finisher at the end of the day. I thought it was by far the worst demonstration of his hands in the playoffs. But I'll cut him some slack because it was one game, and I'm sure he'll bounce back and be better next game. I do agree with you that they were sending more help. Like, there's a symbiotic relationship between those two things that allows Ayton to maybe have a bad game and Bridges to have a good one. But I also was straight up getting frustrated with him in the first half.
And I don't disagree with that. And I think the Bucks sort of showed everyone again that putting a smaller defender on DeAndre Ayton is not, it's not guaranteed that he's going to dominate them, especially if it's someone like Drew Holiday. He almost prefers a bigger body to bang up against. And I think the Clippers were not afraid of putting someone smaller on him. And I think with the help in this game, the Bucks showed that they were willing to put smaller guys between him and the basket and force him to make decisions from that position. And I think you're right. He struggled, and I think he was not great in the first 3 quarters, but I want to give him a shout out for what he did in the fourth quarter. And I want to compare it to something that happened in the regular season. There was a sequence.
I think I know the game you're talking about.
There was a sequence.
Are you talking about one
game,
specific game?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes. No, you're fine. There was a sequence in this game where I believe Chris Paul tried to shoot a shot, missed it. DeAndre Ayton got the rebound, passed it out to Devin Booker. Devin Booker missed a 3. DeAndre Ayton got the offensive rebound again, kicked it out to, I think, Mikal Bridges or Chris Paul again in the corner, and then they hit a 3. Immediately on the other end of the floor, the Bucks ran it down, got to the rim, and Ayton blocks it at the rim. And the kind of intensity that he was bringing on those back-to-back plays, the ability to sort of dominate his matchup, whether it be big or small, getting the offensive rebound, guarding the rim, running down the floor to ensure he was able to defend at the rim, is something that is the important things for him to do. His hands obviously can come and go sometimes, and I think they've been excellent throughout the playoffs. That intensity is what's needed for the Suns more than anything else, and he brought it in the fourth quarter. There's a game that happened in the regular season. It was the Chicago Bulls. Is this the one that you were thinking of as well?
Yes.
Okay, it was the Chicago Bulls game.
Yes.
3 quarters through
It's not about the stats.
Yeah.
Yes.
3 quarters into the game, I was just despondent. I was furious at the way that DeAndre Ayton was playing, and incredibly frustrated because it felt like if he just had a little bit more effort throughout that game, the Suns would have been easily ahead of the game. And then he came in the fourth quarter, and he just dominated. He absolutely dominated in the ways that big men can dominate in the NBA in today's game. And to watch him do that in that game, and then it happened a few other times, but that Chicago Bulls game always sticks out in my mind, and you can find it if you'd like. Go look at the stats. They're not going to blow you away. They're really not. It's just what he did in that fourth quarter.
I think he had 10 and 10 in that game too. It was not that impressive.
If he can come onto the floor and be the best player on the floor for 5 minutes at a time in one, maybe 2 stretches of a game, it makes such a massive difference in the game. And the fact that he did that in the Bulls game, and then a few more times after that, where maybe he wasn't great through 3 quarters, but that fourth quarter he came in with the right amount of focus, gave me a lot of confidence in what he could do going forward. And I needed it because there were times early on in the season where I think his focus was not there. And the fact that he did it again tonight, he came into the finals in the fourth quarter with the right level of focus that wasn't quite there through the first three quarters, I think was huge.
How about this? I made this point on Twitter this morning, but then it became relevant again tonight. Through the first 3 seasons of DeAndre Ayton's career, you know how many times did you see this tweet, first of all?
I didn't, no.
Okay, how many times, then I'm going to play a guessing game with you. How many times do you think he logged over 40 minutes in his first 3 regular seasons combined?
So there must have been a few overtime games in there where it just sort of happened. So I'm going to say 4.
3.
Okay.
In his first 3 regular seasons combined, DeAndre Ayton had 3 games where he played over 40 minutes. How many times has he done it in this playoffs run?
Man, 10?
No. But it's a decent guess because we do really need him. But tonight was the 5th.
Okay.
Tonight was the 5th.
I mean, that's more than,
He had 42 minutes tonight.
Mm-hmm.
In the regular season, he averaged 30 minutes per game. Going into tonight, he was averaging 36 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He played 42 tonight without Saric, and then, of course, Torrey Craig went down. We have to talk about that.
Yeah.
But that sucks. It objectively sucks. But he played 42 minutes tonight, so his playoffs average is probably around 37 now. The conditioning has been on point for DeAndre Ayton. And for him to go in and impact the fourth quarter of this game, a clutch performance the way he did when he's not used to playing 40, 41, 42 minutes, and to still only finish the game with 4 fouls, with the way the officials were officiating this game, with the touch fouls they were calling for Giannis in the second half. That's another thing we can touch on is no one's really talking about the free throw disparity tonight, huh? But like how many times, this is a dead horse I'm about to beat. 42 minutes, only 4 fouls for DeAndre Ayton. How many times over would Jaren Jackson Jr. have fouled out in a game like this? How many bigs are there even in the league who can do this? There really aren't that many. Not when they're the primary defensive assignment on Giannis.
Early on in the season, maybe halfway through the season, I basically asked you if you thought there was a possibility that in the playoffs there was no really down games for DeAndre Ayton because he kind of always got up for big games. And the idea was that he would be more focused going into every game because of the understanding of how big each game is. He's proven that, and I think we've covered it time and time again. We've said it. If he sleepwalks once every 5 games in the regular season but comes into every playoff game completely focused, who cares at that point? Who cares? Playing a long NBA season is hard. And I think even his sleepwalking is going to get better and better and better because people thought he could just come into the league and average 20 and 10 in his sleep, as they said. And that was never really true. It's hard to be in the NBA, and you have to bring your focus every single game.
I want to say
it just gets better and better and better.
I want to say I want to congratulate actually our community, at least the people I've been following on Suns Twitter. I think have been very disciplined in not doing what I consider lazy analysis, which is taking this amazing run from DeAndre Ayton and immediately running to the ranking boards, the whiteboard, and say, okay, where does he rank among these centers? Like, he's better than this guy or this guy or this guy. I think oftentimes it doesn't matter. So I'm not really interested in having that conversation. However, what I will say is, in general, what we can take away from this amazing run from Ayton is it's really made me reevaluate the types of things that I actually think are important for a big and the types of things that translate to playoff basketball. And he's just nailed every single possible point there when you look at the checklist for what you want a big to be able to do. You see all sorts of people on Twitter right now advocating, fans of any team around the league, advocating for their random 7-foot young big to be, he just needs to, no, but seriously, he just needs to nail the small stuff.
Yeah. He reminds me of DeAndre Ayton, yeah.
Is this guy the next DeAndre Ayton? Is Wendell Carter the next DeAndre Ayton? Is Mitch Robinson the next DeAndre Ayton? And it's like all of them are kind of weak facsimiles of DeAndre Ayton in various ways. Maybe Wiseman, is James Wiseman the next DeAndre Ayton? It's very hard to be DeAndre Ayton. It's very hard to be both that strong and that nimble. That's why he went number 1 overall. That's literally the whole reason behind it. Not to mention the touch, too. Like, there are a lot of bigs around the league who have very bright futures and can maybe, you look at Ayton's 4 or 5 biggest strengths, maybe they have 2 or 3 of those things. But putting together the entire package, the way Ayton is doing in this playoffs, like, he's doing everything. He's doing everything. And so, again, I'll excuse a bad performance in the first half tonight offensively where his hands sucked. Like, I'm willing to just put my hands up and say, look, His hands sucked. But I'm willing to excuse that. He dominated the second half, and the way he's bounced back also in games throughout the regular season, he's going to continue to be motivated throughout the series, no doubt in my mind.
Something else I wanted to point out, since we're on the topic of Ayton, and then we can move on a little bit, was there was a moment in the game where they showed a wired segment where it was clear that DeAndre Ayton was a little bit down. Actually, in fact, I'm going to put it at the beginning of this episode so people will hear it if I can find it. Where it was clear that DeAndre Ayton was down on himself for how he was playing at that point, maybe a little flustered by the way they were defending him. And to see that moment, to see Monty Williams coaching DeAndre Ayton in that moment was incredible, because I think he was getting right to the heart of DeAndre Ayton and making sure that he looked at him, making sure that he responded to him, to ensure that he was properly prepared for what he was about to go into. Immediately after that, in fact, while it was playing, DeAndre Ayton disrupted a pass on a pick and roll and got the steal, and the Suns went on to win the game with him playing very, very well in that fourth quarter. I was just so impressed. It was so cool to see a moment like that with Monty Williams coaching DeAndre Ayton in that moment. Did you see that, and what did you think?
Of course I did. I love when they mic up those guys.
Yeah, sometimes it's so boring, and that was like such a great moment.
Sometimes it is very boring. For instance, at the beginning of the game when they showed Bud in the pregame locker room, and he just said the same exact shit as he said in game one. He was like, all right, go out there, play basketball, play random, let's go. Obviously didn't work. But I love those. That's the best part of the broadcast, and it was just a beautiful example of Monty being a master motivator.
Yeah,
great job by the coach.
Yep, great way to put it. Ayton came through in the fourth quarter, played well. Chris Paul mostly good. The 6 turnovers was uncharacteristic in a way where I'm wondering if maybe his hand is a little more hurt than they're letting on, which I'm only assuming here. I have no way of knowing. Because he just doesn't do that. That just never happens, especially in a big game. I
think that's a good guess.
Yeah.
To be honest, I often say that, we don't really think about what these guys are going through. Like, I'm sure Booker's nose is still affecting him. He took another hit to the face tonight. But Chris Paul, especially the fact that he just had an MRI last week. Again, we're speculating here. We're not insiders.
It's wrapped.
But 6 turnovers is really strange for Chris Paul. It just doesn't really happen.
Yeah, when people say it's an uncharacteristic game for Chris Paul, my thought is there's no such thing. He plays the way he plays.
I mean, he makes shots, or here's the thing: he makes shots or he misses shots. But his command of the flow of the offense doesn't really deviate from game to game. Yeah. So that's what's a little bit suspect about it.
Yeah, and obviously Mikal had his great game. Devin Booker did the Devin Booker thing, as I said earlier. But we have to talk about something not great that happened, and that was a Torrey Craig injury. Now, I want to talk about Torrey Craig a little bit because he's incredibly tough, and I've seen him fall in games where I thought, man, that must have hurt. And you know what he does? Gets right back up and immediately plays again. It's very rare to see him look like he's in pain because of how strong and how tough he is. So to see him go down after taking a knee to the side of his knee, it looked like, and then also not really planting his foot on that play, was concerning to say the least. Obviously, Dario Saric tore his ACL in the last game, a disaster. We haven't talked about that on the podcast. It's horrible. It's horrible not just because the Suns are down a player. It's horrible because of the amount of work that he's put in to be there. We don't know the extent of Torrey Craig's injury at this point. I hope it's not anything like Dario Saric's. I hope it's more of he got kneed in the wrong spot on his knee and it's going to hurt like hell and maybe he'll be back soon. We don't know. So first, I guess I'll give you a chance to just respond to him being injured, and then we can talk about where the Suns go from there.
Well, it sucks. He's one of the greatest competitors that the Suns have. I mean, he's an incredible hustle player. He lays it all out there on the floor every night. Not to mention it's a huge loss for the rest of the series. Him and Dario, both, it sucked.
Unfortunately, Sam had some internet issues in the middle of him talking about Torrey Craig there, so I'm going to have to do the end of this one on my own. But I did want to talk about the implications of the Torrey Craig injury and what it means for the Suns going forward. So I'm just going to talk a little bit by myself. I apologize for the issues that we had here. We tried to resolve it for a while. Weren't able to get it done. Torrey Craig being out sucks. It just sucks for the Suns in so many ways because when Dario Saric was out, when Dario Saric could no longer play, I think a lot of Suns fans felt confident because Torrey Craig was on the team. Now, if he's hurt for an extended period of time, that hurts the Suns in many ways, and I think it'll hurt a lot of Suns fans' confidence in what they're able to do or what they're going to be able to do going forward. Without Torrey Craig, there are options for the Suns. The first one I think is obvious. It's Frank Kaminsky. Can Frank Kaminsky come in and play those backup minutes without Dario Saric? Essentially, Jay Crowder is essentially at center in these games, but he was able to play center because Torrey Craig was in the game as well. So if Frank Kaminsky comes in and plays, that moves everyone up a little bit and allows them to have a more traditional big on the floor. And I think something interesting was happening because Frank Kaminsky did play a few minutes without Torrey Craig on the floor tonight. When Frank Kaminsky was in the game, they were not trusting him to switch. They were not trusting him to drop. They were trapping. They were blitzing. So when Frank was guarding the screener, both defenders just ran up hard on the ball handler, forced the ball handler to pass the ball, and then they trusted the rest of the defenders to rotate around, basically ensuring that in no way was Frank Kaminsky going to be on the ball for an extended period of time. They were trying to get the ball out and away from Frank, and then other defenders were able to recover on that and help fight. So I think if Frank does play, look for that. They're going to trap on screen and rolls and force the ball out of the ball handler's hands and kind of trust the rest of the defenders to play in those scenarios. Now, if he does play and they try to play him when DeAndre Ayton's out of the game, that means DeAndre Ayton's going to have to play more minutes because they're not going to be able to do that for a long period of time. It takes a lot of effort, and if the Bucks find a way to beat that, they're going to do it. They're going to do it over and over and over again. They're just going to hammer the Suns with whatever solution they come up with in that scenario. So there's option one, Frank Kaminsky in the game. If Frank Kaminsky does not play, that means they're going to try to survive with Nader, Abdel Nader playing in these games. If Abdel Nader does play, that allows Jay Crowder to essentially play the backup center minutes without DeAndre Ayton on the floor, and it forces the Suns to go a little bit smaller in those minutes. I don't think that that's necessarily a terrible option. It's just not great. None of the options are going to be great without Dario Saric or Torrey Craig. I think it's more likely the Suns go to Abdel Nader early and try that, and if it works, they'll stick with it for the rest of the game as long as players are able to stay out of foul trouble. The toughest part about all of this is with Craig, and it wasn't just that he allowed the Suns to play small. It wasn't just that the Suns were able to play without a center on the floor. He also was another option they had in guarding Giannis, and he did relatively well. Obviously, the injury is him taking a charge on Giannis. How many players on the Suns are willing to put themselves in the position where they're going to get hammered by Giannis on a drive? Torrey Craig is one of the only guys. So that's, I think, where it puts the Suns in a really tough position. They can't necessarily go small without Abdel Nader being on the floor if you're using bench minutes at all. Obviously, every single one of the other guys' minutes can go up if he's out for an extended period of time. And then Frank Kaminsky minutes are something that they have to sustain if Frank Kaminsky does end up playing. It's not a great situation for the Suns, and I really hope that he's healthy, not just necessarily to come back in this series. I just don't want any extended injury on him. It would be great to re-sign him. He is a free agent. I don't want him going into his free agency with a bad injury. So that's a really unfortunate situation for the Suns. Obviously, everyone's thinking about Torrey Craig tonight. I hope he's okay. But the Suns ultimately do end this game up 2-0 in the NBA Finals, which is a remarkable feat regardless. An incredible game once again for Devin Booker. An incredible game once again for Mikal Bridges. And I think Chris Paul did what he needed to do in order to win this game. And obviously DeAndre Ayton with that fourth quarter where he dominated for a short period of time. We will be back once again after Game 3. Game 3 is on Sunday. It's an earlier game, 5 p.m. Arizona time, and I hope that's true because usually Sam is the one to fact check me. He's not here. Both of us should be back by Sunday as long as we're able to work out the technical difficulties that plagued us today. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and go Suns.